Jason comes back home and scares Caroline with his sudden appearance, but reassures her that everything will be fine as he's found the specimen that he's looking for. However, she says she had a nightmare where she could hear insects and was calling out to him, but received no answer. Caroline also mentions that she saw a dead man who was actually a monster, but Jason didn't give it too much attention, and asks her to continue her medication. Meanwhile, Ellery's men bring Alec to the facility to be studied in the mobile lab. Later, Abby meets Liz and tells her that Alec has been kidnapped. She doesn't seem to know who's behind this, but wants to rescue Alec, so she asks Liz for help. Liz reminds Abby of a childhood memory, after which they get to work. Now, Avery and Jason study Alec's intricate body and discuss the possibilities of his capabilities. However, Jason asks Alec to leave so that he can get to work. Avery complies, and then Jason lets Alec thaw out a little. Meanwhile, Danny wakes up in the hospital and meets the mysterious agent again. The agent transports his consciousness to a vision of the future, where Abby and Liz are mercilessly killed by some assassins. Danny panics upon seeing this, and then the agents tell him that he has a choice to stop this from happening. Now Liz and Abby go to the Woodrue house to meet Caroline, after which they ask her about Jason. She says that he's not at home, but also acts very confused to see the girls. Liz checks out some research that's lying on the table, while Abby talks to Caroline and realizes that she's suffering from Alzheimer's. Abby figures that Jason had gone to the swamp last night, and her suspicions are confirmed when she sees the muddy footprints, so she takes Liz and leaves immediately. As Jason conducts some savage experiments on Alec, the swamp man suddenly awakens. Later, Liz and Abby go to Jason's lab, but they don't find him there. This prompts him to go through the files, and they eventually figure out where he might be located after doing a bit of snooping. Jason continues to torture Alec, and then takes out his vital organs in the process. He realizes that they serve no purpose and declares that Alec is not a man but rather a plant who thinks he's a man. Alec is confused, so Jason clarifies that the swamp vines had tried to replicate Alec's consciousness into a plant body when he died. Back in the hospital, the mysterious agent toys with Danny's feelings and leaves him in a fix over what he should do about Abby and Liz. After careful consideration, Danny decides to play the Blue Devil character again, but his cursed mask triggers a transformation that turns him into a demon. Meanwhile, Avery shocks Maria by showing her that he's still alive, and also brings a psychiatric doctor who takes her away to a mental institution. Maria tries to resist, but Avery has managed to issue a court order against her, so she's taken away. Then we see Matt getting drunk at a bar, and he has a brief chat with Delroy, but it does nothing to help his mood. Later in the night, Abby and Liz find the mobile lab and enter it to look for Alec. The plants awaken to lead them to the swamp man, but they're interrupted when some mercenaries come looking for them. Liz messes up, so the girls get cornered, after which Abby reacts pretty quick and switches off the power to buy some time. It doesn't do much to help them out though, but just as the assassins are about to attack them, a blue flame launches on one of them and kills him instantly. The soldiers begin to shoot into the air, but it's of no use as the Blue Devil makes his appearance and starts killing them off one by one. Jason is alerted by the security and is taken away, but he manages to sneak Alec's organs along as well. Liz and Abby are shocked to see the Blue Devil when he shows himself, but he leaves them alone and walks away. They don't have much time to think about this, so they follow the trail of vines and eventually find Alec, who's in terrible condition. Abby fears that he's dead, but then he awakens and asks her to switch off the radiation light. This allows him to regenerate his body parts, and he thanks Abby, after which he says that he has to go back to Skeeter Cove to learn the truth. Abby leaves Liz behind and follows him, and then we see that Danny is transformed back into his human form. Now we see Matt, who is drunk and driving on the road. He avoids a direct collision but still ends up in a horrible accident. Meanwhile, Jason rushes back home to give Caroline the good news, but he finds her trembling inside the bedroom. He learns that she's overdosed on her medication and cries as she collapses into his arms. Meanwhile, Avery meets Maria in the institute and lets her know that she's never going to beat him at his own game. He leaves her locked inside as she laments her luck and begins to suffer. At the swamp, Alec tells Abby that he must find out his true identity, so he goes into the water. Abby is confused at first, but then the swamp man returns with a dead body and reveals to her that this is the real Alec Holland. He declares that he isn't Alec but rather a blurred copy of him. However, Abby continues to call him Alec, and says that she will definitely help him become human again. However, he hears more mercenaries arriving, so he tells Abby to go home and leaves to take care of them. Meanwhile, Jason tapes up Caroline so that she doesn't get to harm herself again. As Abby gets back to Liz, she struggles to explain the situation to her, and breaks down into tears as she feels she's lost Alec for good. That's when Liz tells her about Maria getting locked up by Avery, and it triggers some hope for her. Now Abby goes to talk to Maria while Liz goes to meet Danny as she's come across the Blue Devil comic. Then Jason tries to rescue Caroline by showing her all the plant-based body parts he's extracted from Alec, and begins to cook them into some kind of solution. Back at the swamp, Ellery gathers a team of elite soldiers to kill Alec, much to Avery's disappointment, and then they get into an ugly confrontation. Ellery warns Avery against Lucilia and tells him to get his protocol in order. Then we see Lucilia going to the hospital to check up on Matt, but unfortunately, she learns that her son was involved in a case of drunk driving. Now Liz meets Danny, who says that he can't get the Blue Devil out of his head, so he must run away from Murray to find his own path. He leaves Liz in charge of his store, after which he successfully manages to exit the town as the barrier has been lifted. Maria is seen struggling with the medication that is being administered to her, and then she panics as she sees some horrifying visions. Xanadu interrupts these visions and tells Maria that she is being haunted by the demons of her past. Maria asks her for help even though she warns her that this might not end well. Then we see Ellery and his men making their way through the forest as they spot some footprints. A tense sequence follows as some of the soldiers try to locate the swamp man. Suddenly, they hear some twigs snapping and fire away, but Alec manages to carry out a sneak attack on one of the soldiers. Abby reaches the mental institution, but it's too late for her, as Maria has now lost herself to Xanadu's hallucinations. Meanwhile, Avery gets drunk at Delroy's bar. He creates a scene and Delroy asks him to leave, but Avery refuses to listen. And that's when Delroy tells him about Matt's incident, and it prompts him to leave for the hospital. At the Woodrue house, Jason finishes up his medicine and consumes it first to see how it affects him, but things go south when he experiences a painful side effect and drops to the floor. As the soldiers find their missing member, they realize that this is a trap, and they are attacked by Alec's vines. Now Caroline looks on in shock as Jason gets up and experiences his new powers. Abby walks in on them, but Jason takes her hostage when she tries to make a call to 911. Later, Avery goes to meet Matt, but Lucilia drives him out of the room and asks him about his motivations. Avery says that he and Maria are going to be divorced, so they can finally be together with their son. However, Lucilia reminds him of his crimes and tells him to stay away from them. Jason reveals to Abby that he can finally save Caroline, but she tries to stop him, so he starts to choke her. Luckily, Tyler and the cops manage to trace her call and reach just in time to stun Jason with tasers. Back at the swamp, the soldiers continue to struggle against the vines, so their leader, Shaw, taunts Alec. This doesn't end well, as the swamp man starts killing the soldiers one by one, and it forces the survivors to retreat. As Jason is taken away by the cops, Caroline is taken to the hospital to be treated for her overdose. Now, Matt finally wakes up and learns that Avery's still alive when he hears it from Lucilia. The mother and son have an emotional conversation, after which Lucilia goes back to the car. However, Avery shows up and stabs her. Then, he locks her in the trunk and sinks the car as she cries for help. Avery gets back inside his vehicle, but strangely coughs out some plant goo. Now, the swamp man confronts Ellery and tells him to warn the others not to bother him anymore. Then, Alec's consciousness arrives and asks the swamp man to focus on helping Abby, as she's the only human connectivity they have. Later, Abby comes to meet Alec in the cabin and tells him that she wants to see more of the green. He reveals he wanted to lose himself in the swamp, but couldn't bear to leave her forever. He then tells her that the darkness is still fighting to break out of the swamp, so she agrees to help him fight it whenever it will happen. Now, Matt goes back to the police station, but finds it empty with plants growing everywhere. He finds Tyler dead on the floor and searches the area some more, after which he sees Jason has shockingly transformed into a swamp monster as well. He attacks Matt, who tries to shoot him, but it doesn't end well. And there you go, that's Swamp Thing Season 1. Like, share, and subscribe, and show us some love. and don't forget to ring that bell icon because I've got a ton of content coming your way real soon. That's it for now, see you next time.